Thank you, Mike. Good evening, everyone. How's everybody doing tonight? Doing okay? I'm trying to do my best Brent intro here, which isn't really good. So we really want to thank you for being here, and thank you for helping us as we start to get Mazi on its feet. We're just blessed to be in this building, and tonight I want to talk a little bit about some things that we're learning with the journey of Joseph. Joe Jacobson, as Brent likes to say, right? So when we look at the story so far, we're going to take just a little detour from that story tonight, and we're going to focus on what God has given us to be able to deal with things that are unanticipated. When things come into our lives that are a little bit different, and that in the story of Joseph, we've already seen so far that Brent has led us through. His story when he goes to his brothers and is sold into slavery and ends up in a beautiful home and then is accused of a crime and ends up in prison. And that's kind of where Brent left us off in that story. And if you look at his journey, we can look at our own and go, man, I'm not so bad compared to what he has, right? And yet we look at him and we say, how is it that Joseph was able to deal with all that stuff? Is he just a better person than I am? Is he like a better human being? Did God somehow endow him with the ability to handle all that? And the truth is that he's no different than you or me. He just happened to be in the right place in the wrong time, maybe, but God used every one of those things to help him become a leader, Pharaoh's second in command in Egypt. Right? And we'll hear more of that story as we go on. So tonight, what I want to do is take just, again, a brief detour there, and I want to look at what God has given us in terms of a model that we can look at to help us through, to help us through wherever we are to get to wherever we think we're going. And by that, I mean, I want to look at the seasons that God has given us. So God's given us 4 seasons, right? Spring, summer, autumn, I'll use that instead of fall, autumn, and winter, right? And we're right in the middle of one of the most beautiful of those, or the beginning of that, right? And over the next few weeks, we'll be able to see God's paintbrush at work as he just designs things for us. But each of those seasons also carry with it some lessons. So just to begin, I'd like to have just a little bit of interaction tonight with the crew here. So what I'd like you to do, just in a quick show of hands, and you can only vote once, right, is which one is your favorite season? So I'll give you a minute to think about that. Which one is your favorite season of the 4? There are only 4, and everybody votes everybody votes only once, okay? So I just want to do this as we start our journey tonight. So let's start with, how many here feel like spring is the best season? So they're slowly coming forward. 4. All right, remember who you are. Remember, there's going to be a quiz later on this, right? How many feel, thank you for that, how many feel that summer is the best season? Well, a lot. That's interesting. I didn't even count, so somebody count all that, right? There's a bunch of us. How many feel, thank you for that, how many feel that autumn is the best season? Remember, you can only vote once, everybody, right? Everybody? That's okay. Summer and autumn are like neck and neck. And last but not least, how many feel that winter is the best season? And we have 0. What a surprise. We live in the winter wonderland, y'all. I mean, we have to think about that, right? So that's just interesting. So what I'd like to do tonight is let's walk through each of those seasons. And I want to remember those, or for those of you who picked spring or summer or autumn, nobody picked winter. Let's walk through and say, well, what appeals to us from each of those seasons, and how can we use those kinds of attributes to help us as we live our life day after day after day. So let's start our journey by talking about spring. Spring is normally a time of new beginnings, right? Spring is a time when you want to get outside, you've been cooped up, and you want to get outside, you want to plant things, you want to begin to water your flowers, which late in the fall gets to be kind of an old task for some of us. And it's something that's new. It's something that's brand new. So the question, how do you plant seeds in the spring? And what does that have to do with how we live our lives? What can we do that? The Bible gives us an example. If you remember the parable of the sower, anybody remember that? I think we talked about that in here before. Parable of the sower, where the sower comes out and he just sows the seed. And it falls on 4 different kinds of soil, if you recall, right? The first one is it falls on rocky soil. So the seeds end up being there and it just doesn't take root. There's no earth there for it to take root, but it ends up being there. And that happens to be one of the areas that seeds are sown. Next one is shallow soil, right? So the sower sows the seed in the shallow soil. It springs up quickly, but because it is shallow, the roots burn and it dies, right? The third one is it's sown into a field, but then there's tares, there's weeds, in essence, in the field, and the weeds choke out the grain, and therefore it's just not productive. And then the last one is the seed is sown on good ground. So a question that I would ask us tonight, which then produces 60, 100-fold, right? So the question is, how do we know? If spring is a time of new beginnings, how do we take the things that we're trying new, and how do we push out there and throw seed into that? And how do we know that we're approaching the right ground? See, I have some people in here. Anybody here grow up on a farm? I know you did. Anybody else grow up on a farm? Okay, that's good. So people who have grown up on a farm kind of get the idea of the law of the harvest. So in springtime, you don't just go out there, grab a bag of seeds and throw it on the ground. There's a lot of prep work that has to happen. You have to get the fields ready. You have to know which seed you're going to select, where you're going to plant them. And in some of the fields, they rotate them, right? And there's a lot of thinking that goes into planting a seed for a new beginning every year. So how do we apply that? How many here tonight are in a new beginning? Now, some of y'all just got married, so I know that that's one for sure, right? Congrats on that, by the way. How many, it can be either a new job, or a new relationship, or a new situation or circumstance that you happen to be in, right? Many of us face new beginnings all the time. When we look at the story of Joseph, he had several. Some of them were not of his own making, but he ended up being in a new situation and he had to adapt and go, okay. And the Lord was with him, as Brent shared with us last week, and that just kind of helped him through that. So it's important, as we know, that the season of spring is a new beginning. One of the applications we can put forward as Christian people and as members or as the group that's starting Mazi, how easy is it for us to sow a new relationship? How much do we intentionally go out and try to talk to new people so that we can become friends with them? How many of you knew each other before you walked into this room over the last several weeks? This is an opportunity that we as human beings are created for. We're created to be social. We're created to be out and to really reach out and to meet new people and make friends with them and share with them and share our lives together in one way or another. So when you think of spring, think of new beginnings, think of opportunities that we have to go out and to forge new friendships to help us come together and grow as a body. Those are some lessons that we can learn from the simple season, and there are so many more, but those are some high-level lessons that we can learn. So when we move from spring, then we move into summer, and many of you pick summer as your favorite. Summer is a time where you just roll up your sleeves and you work. Now, it is also a time, I know, when we're on the beach and we're doing all that kind of stuff as well, but summer is a time where you take what we sow, the seeds that were sown in spring, and we begin to work them. We begin to place effort. It's for growth and it's for development. It's for when we get stronger because we're in circumstances that God has put in front of us. So every time we have that opportunity, as we walk through them, we become stronger. I heard someone the other day mention to me that when they're in the middle of a story or their life is caving in around them, this is another way to look at summer, I suppose. It's just hard work. There are young parents with children sometimes. It's just hard work. Love the kids. I mean, there's that, right? Brent, he left. He would say that if he was standing right here. It's just an opportunity for us to exercise the muscles that God's given us. But there is an opportunity for us to continually work and to be part of growing. And we ourselves are the one who are growing. Growth doesn't happen, in other words, without work. So to kind of illustrate that for you tonight, I want to share a story. And many of you don't know, none of you except my mom. This is my mom, by the way. Brent's grandma, he referred to her last week, so go back to that message and you can catch some of that. When I was a kid, when I was a young man, my desire was to play baseball. Now, I know I don't look like it, but once upon a time, I was a fair athlete, once upon a time. And so I want you to walk with me through this silly story that illustrates that it requires work to move to the next season. So I want you to imagine that the Tigers, which for the first time in a long time, right? The Tigers are finally pushing through and winning some series. Now, for those of you who like 1968 and 1984, and you guys are like, what? That was like ancient history, right? No. There used to be that the Tigers were there a lot. But just imagine, so this year, so the Tigers, we're gonna move forward in time a little bit. And we're going to go forward and we're going to say, okay, they are in the World Series, and if they don't get it, it's not my fault, okay? So they're in the World Series in this story. And I want you to imagine it's game 6 of the World Series, and it looks like the teams will be even after game 6. Now, if you know anything about series, if you're like, what is baseball? What is this? Man, why are we even talking about it? A 7-game series, you have to win 4. So if each team wins 3, then there's a 7th game, and then whoever wins that game wins the series, is the way that works. So we're going to imagine that the two teams are equal, or that they're tied after 6. We're also going to imagine that the third baseman for the Tigers breaks his leg on the very last play sliding into home. Sad. Now, again, if that happens, it's not my fault. So we're gonna imagine that, okay? I also want you to imagine that I'm sitting home watching this on my couch, and I'm watching it on the TV like most of us may be. And I want you to imagine that I'm looking at that and go, look, I could do that. I could play third base. I always wanted to be a pro baseball player. I can do that. And imagine in my story, it's my story, the phone rings. And the phone rings, oh, hello. Happens to be AJ Hinch. And he happens to say, hey, we could use a third baseman. We heard that you're a good third baseman and that you like to play baseball. I'm like, yeah. So if you can make it, we're playing tomorrow. We are the home team, and we would love for you to join us tomorrow for Game 7 of the World Series. So what do you think I'd say? Absolutely, let's do it. So we get there, and I show up. I get in my car, drive down there, and then they have to go into the old uniforms to find one that would fit right, right. And then I'm out there, and we're warming up before the game, and I'm out there with all the Tigers, and I'm looking at the stadium, and it's amazing, right? It's like, wow, it's just unbelievable. So I'm out there and I'm throwing, I'm feeling pretty good, right? So then they make the batting lineup, and they decide to have me hit first. Now this is a crazy story, I know, but they want me to hit first. So we go out there and say, all right. Um, and actually, no, we are the away team. So our team is up to bat first. So I'm the first pitch of Game 7 of a World Series, and I'm standing in there. So if you can imagine, and work with me, I know this takes some imagination, but if you can imagine that I'm going to be there, and I'm ready. I have waited a bunch of years. I'm not going to tell you how many, a bunch of years to get here. And just imagine that I'm there and I'm ready. So, what do you think the odds are that a guy like me in that situation, that silly story, can hit a 100-mile-an-hour fastball? Probably zip, right? Maybe I'll tick it. Maybe I'll slightly foul it off and feel like I did something good. But of course, if guys throw 3 pitches, I'm out. So then I go, and I'm sad about that, but I'm still pretty cool because this is Game 7 of the World Series, man. This is awesome. So I get there, and we get in the dugout, and we score a few runs, which is good. The Tigers are doing that now, so I want that to continue, right? And then we go out into the field, and I'm playing third base. Now, anybody here play baseball or softball or anything like that? So third base is a position on the field where there's a potential that you're going to get something hit hard at you, right? Because the guys who are hitting on the other team can hit a 100-mile-an-hour fastball. And if you watch, the ball leaves the bat at something slightly greater than 100 mile an hour. That's going to be coming right at me. So again, what do you think the odds are that a guy like me, and be kind, can field that ball? Probably not good. So the story goes on, Tigers win, and we're all great, right? It's all good. But the point of that silly story is the people who play in a World Series deserve to be in a World Series. There's not one of them that had anything close to that little story that I showed. Not one. Every one of them had to get forward, and they had to put hours and hours of fielding ground balls, of swinging a baseball bat, of doing something over and over and over and over and over and over again so that they could participate in their dream. Their dream was sown in their spring season when they were younger. And they just kept at it and kept working. There are people who play in the minor leagues in baseball their entire career, and they never make it to the big show, to the big leagues. Why? Is it because of lack of effort? Hard to tell. But the thing is that you don't get to the big leagues without putting in the work. Sometimes when we will live our lives, right? We'll get past the spring. We have dreams. Man, we have dreams. This is what we're going to do. I'm going to make this happen. I have a new beginning, and I'm off and I'm running with it. And then I get to the point where it requires work and effort for me to continue to nurture that. And sometimes it just falls off. Sometimes I get, like, I can't believe, why is this taking so long? Think of Joseph. Do you think he thought that once in a while? Probably, as he was in there in the prisons and that kind of thing. So the point of summer is it is a point of work, it is a point of effort, and it's a point of continually massaging and working the dreams that you had in the springtime. Now we're going to move into autumn. And autumn is a time of results, right? If you put the appropriate work in, then you'll be able to reap the results. And a lot of times when we think of autumn in the natural sense, autumn is beautiful. Autumn has, at least in our neck of the woods, right? We have the four seasons. Not every part of the world does, but we do. And it allows us to see God's handiwork for us. So it's a time of results. It's a time of reaping what we were able to do in the first couple of seasons. When we planted the seeds in spring, we worked them in summer, and then we are expecting results. So how do we make sure, or how do we define results? How do we define results in relationships? Think about a particularly special or great relationship that you have. How do you define results? Is the relationship growing? Are there issues with the relationship? What about a job situation? How do I define results in my job? Is it going in the right direction? Have I just been stuck in this dead-end job forever? Or is there something that can come about of that? How do you know what your influence is like? We run into people all the time. And how do we know that the person that we came across and the person we took time to talk to, right, it just inspired them at just the right moment so that they could take that and they could begin to just share that with people that they know? That's a challenge for us in Mazi. That's a challenge. How do we take what we have and share that with somebody else? To take the work, take the risk to build a new relationship and share that and bring them in and help to work together so that our results together can be God's glory in this facility, in this building, in this church. And because of Him, we're all here. So results is an interesting byproduct. Here's what happens after we run through the summer and we're into the fall. Okay, now with that, we're going to roll back into the winter that nobody picked. The winter season is one that it's a time of ending something, right? It's a time of ending. It's a time of reflection. It's a time of planning. It's a time of taking stock for what has happened over the previous 3 seasons. And how do we look at that? And how can we be better people as a result of that? When you think about it, every day that we wake up and we put our feet on the ground, we are a different person than we were the day before. Every day. And certainly if you extend that into every year and you look back over your life, every year that we've grown up, we are a product of all of the experiences that we had, all the decisions that we made, all of the interactions that we had. And every day we're stronger because of that. So when you think of winter, there are some things that we are looking at that need to be ended or look like it's heading toward an ending. I'll speak for me. There's the word retirement is out there somewhere. It's there. Some of you have kind of crossed through that, and we can talk and you can share that with me. Or it might be that I'm at the end of a job that I just don't know how much further I can take it. I'm not sure how much more I can do in this place. And maybe, just maybe, there's a need to end that and to look for what's different. See, because what comes after winter? Spring. There's always another spring. And yet sometimes we look at winter as just a pure ending and don't remember that there's a reflection part, there's a regeneration part, there's a planning part. Again, for those of you who are had some farm experience, that's when you're planning for the future year, the next year. There's a lot there. So again, in the winter, it's a time to just think about how we've grown, what we've done, how we can take that, and then how we can plan to be more effective in the following year. So I have one other quick little story, and we're almost done. But I think when we walk through those 4 seasons, as we do, and as you experience fall and you experience winter, my nudge to you and to me is to let's look at that and say, God's given us this model, and it is right in front of our eyes to tell us that there are attributes of each of the seasons that we all experience at one time or another in every facet of our life. It's not just my church life. It's not just my personal life. It can be my social organizations. It can be my church. It can be my work. It can be special relationships or relationships that I casually am creating. But there's a model there. We know that Joseph knew of that. And so my nudge to us tonight is just think about it. If we can do anything, let's just think about seasons and how our lives can follow the pattern that exists for us in the seasons. That there's always a next season. That's something to think about. One of the challenges, though, is we often don't know when to leave a particular season. And we may stay there longer than we should. So with this, I'm gonna end with this story, and this is going to be familiar to you. So the story is told of a little girl, okay? And I want to share this with you. A little girl about 5 years old. A little girl who has blonde, curly hair, just the apple of her mom's eye. And she's just everything to this mom. And so her mom takes her with her to go shopping and do chores and stuff like that. So she takes her, and they walk into this store. And this store has behind the counter one of those, cheap $2, $3 necklaces that are behind the counter, right? And the little girl looks at that and says, "Man, Mom, I want that. Can I have that?" And the mother looks at her little daughter, and she says, well, she thinks that, okay, I have an opportunity to share a lesson for my little girl. She said, "Honey, you can have that, but in order to get it, I need you to do your chores at home, and I will give you money for the chores that you do, and before you know it, you're going to have enough saved to come back and to buy that necklace." And she looked up, she looked at the necklace, she looked at her mom, she said, "All right, let's do it." So they get home, and she starts doing everything she can think of. "Mom, that was a chore. Do I get a quarter? Do I get something?" Right? And after a while, the mom was very diligent with this and continued to remind her why she was doing that. And so she had finally had enough change to go and to purchase that cheap necklace behind the counter of a local store. So the day came. They went down to the store, and the little girl just had a whole handful of money. Just coins all over it. And they get to the counter, and she raises up her little hands, and she puts on the counter, just drops all of the coins there, right? The person behind the counter counted them out slowly, and sure enough, she had enough money to purchase that necklace that she so desired. So the clerk took it off and gave it to the little girl, and she put it on her neck, and she never took it off. Except her mom told her she had to take it off when she took a bath, because if she didn't, she'd get a green ring around her neck, and she didn't want to do that. But she never took it off, ever. It was so precious to her. And man, she was proud of that. She earned it, she was proud of it, she wanted it, she got it. Well, the little girl also had just a big old daddy, right? And he was there, and he saw what was happening, and certainly supported his wife in there as they were teaching their little girl. And one day he came in, and every night he would come in and he would say prayers with his little girl and all of their children, with his little girl, as it was nighttime, so they went in and said prayers. So one night the daddy came in and they said their prayers, and the daddy looked at the girl and he said, "Honey," he said, "do you love me?" And she's like, "Well, of course I love you, Daddy. I mean, why would you even ask such a question like that? What are you talking about?" "Well, I just wanted to know if you love me, can you give me that necklace?" And she's like, I can't do that. But I'll tell you what I will do. You know, that old stuffed bear that you bought me? You can have that, Dad. You can have that. Take that. See, I want to show you, Dad, how much I love you. And he's like, no, honey, that's okay. Keep your necklace. I just want you to know, never forget that your daddy loves you. Keep the necklace, honey. He kissed her goodnight. He walked out the room, and he flipped the light off. A couple days later, about a week later, he came in, saw the opportunity to ask the same question. Honey, during their prayers in the evening, do you love me? And she said, absolutely. Why do you ask me this? I thought we settled this a couple days ago. I just want to know, honey. He said, of course I love you. Can I have the necklace? And she's like, I can't. But I'll tell you what I will give you. I give you that bicycle you just bought me 2 days ago. You can have that one back. You know how much that cost, Dad? You can have that. I want to show you how much I love you. Well, this went on 2 or 3 times, the same kind of thing. And then one night, the daddy came into the room with this little girl. And this time he knew something was a little bit different. When he walked into the room, the little girl was seated on the end of her bed. And it was different. She had something in her hands when he walked into the room. And as he walked in, he went up to her and said, honey, you okay? And she was crying. And she said, are you okay? And with her tears running down her cheeks, she lifted up her hand and said, Dad, I just want you to know how much I love you. She laid out her hands, and there was that old, ratty old necklace. But to her, it was so precious. And she laid it out. Dad, I love you. I want you to know how much I love you. So she put her hands out there, and that old boy was wiping some tears off him on his own. And he pulled that out of her hand. He looked down at his daughter. And with one hand, he put that in his pocket. And with his other hand, he pulled out a genuine string of pearls. And he put it on her neck. You see, he had it all the time. And yet she had to give up the pearls that she bought that were so precious to her before he could give her something that was far greater in value. And that story, I mean, we have just great examples. And I also realize in a room like this that maybe some girls in here didn't have daddies like that, you know? But I'm here to share with you that Jesus can be that. God wants to be that father for you. And he's there with his hands out waiting for us, all of us, to give back what we are holding on to. Gang, we serve a great God. And this is just a small picture of what God wants. He loves us so much, he gave us his son who died for us, right? So I want to share that. What does that have to do with seasons? Sometimes we get stuck in one of those seasons. We'll get stuck where we just have dreams and dreams and dreams and dreams and dreams and dreams. And we're just throwing seeds everywhere. We have no idea what's happening. We don't even think that we got to get past that and begin to work it. But we love this. And we say, well, how come I'm not getting results? Because we hold on to something that keeps us inside of that season. Sometimes we're in the summer mode when we're out there and we're just working our heads off. And we just head down, we're going to do it, I'm going to do it, and we just never get out of that. Right? And when the results or the harvest is right there, if we would only give up something that we're holding on to that keeps us inside of those seasons and helps us or stops us from being as effective as Christians as we could be, because we have everything we need. And if we do that, God has something that's so much better for us if we will just release whatever it is we're holding on to. And if we're looking for results, we're looking, okay, we're reaping the results of the hard work. But if we don't think about, okay, so now I have to begin to think about what's next. Sooner or later, that glitter fades. Sooner or later, that part of our lives begins to fade as well. So we get into winter, and we may be in winter thinking like, this is it. There is no spring beyond my winter. I don't know what you're talking about, but this is dire. And you got to think that Joseph had to think that. I mean, he wasn't in there overnight. He was there 12, 13 years or whatever it ends up being, right? He's no different than we are, right? God just chose to record his story down for us to take advantage of. So all of that tonight, and we'll close, is to share with us, gang, wherever we happen to be. I heard a story the other day from a lady who said, sometimes the walls are caving in, and I feel like, I don't know what to do. But she said, sometimes when I look at that, I begin to think that, you know what? This is just the middle of the story. I have no idea how this is going to end up. But someday I'm going to remember the middle of the story when I get to the end, when I get to the harvest, I get to the things that I learned through this, and I become a better person. That's a great outlook. And that's something that I think we can all do. Last thing I'll share, I promise, last thing, is I had lunch with a friend of mine. It took Brent. Brent and I met this gentleman that we met down near Pontiac, and we had a lunch with him. And he's told a story about when he came through and he was going through some health issues, and he said he spoke out to God as many people do. God, if you get me out of this, I'll do whatever you want me to do. I'll do it. They said as we were sitting there thinking about that, he started to think to himself, why am I playing chess with God? As if I can outsmart him, if I can outmaneuver him on a chessboard. And he said when he started to feel his health was leaving him, I just thought, man, that is just not, why am I doing it? It's pointless. So he said, Cass, the thing you need to know, until I came to the point where I could tip my king, in other words, surrender. Chess, if you know the game, you protect the king, right? But I came to the point like, why am I trying? I can't outsmart God. Why am I playing chess with God? When he tipped the king and said, whatever you want, Lord, things really started to open up in his life. So that's my nudge for us tonight, gang. And I say it to me as well as I do to you. Let's really look at the model that God gave us through the seasons, how that applies to the life and the story of Joseph, but also how it applies to each of us. If we're stuck in one of the seasons, let's look at, why am I stuck here? Because God has something more for me if I'll give whatever's holding me there to him. So tonight, I hope that blesses you. I hope that we as a group of people, as a church of God here at Mazi, that we can start to reach out and we can start to share that God has given to us. And let's let go of whatever's holding us back to forge those relationships.